Mountaineers have begun attacking our villages. A harsh winter has fallen over these lands, and I'm trying my best to survive and save my people. But a dark evil lurks. Strange creatures and a frigid cold are coming from Jagged Peak Mountain. We can use all the help we can get, so like, subscribe, and hit that village bell so you can be the first to watch all the adventures. Now, here's 100 days as a villager. Day 1, the mayor called everyone into the town square to discuss the recent weather changes and the strange creatures that have been seen as of late. He said that we should start thinking of constructing some defenses, but upon checking the rather shabby village storehouse, we were pretty much out of all the materials we would need, so I went scavenging for whatever food I could find. Luckily, running into a group of pigs, I could almost see in their eyes asking, "Where is the grass gone?" Feeling a little guilty, I decided not to slaughter them, and I made my way to the nearby trees, gathering some wood to craft some basic tools, and then finding a cave nearby to gather stone for upgrading them. I found a huge deposit of coal, which would come in handy for campfires needed in the village. I then heard a hiss behind me and turned around to be greeted by a creeper. I jumped, barely managing to escape death. I immediately started heading back home when I stumbled upon a village with pillagers and a Ravager overlooking it. The Ravager quickly approached me, saying this wasn't just any raid, it was actually this video's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, which you can download for free using the link in my description or the QR code on the screen for both mobile phone and PC. You know I love lore and fighting awesome bosses, so I am so excited to tell you about the Guardian of the Void Keep, Malik Kavar. This corrupted priest of light fell in love with darkness, and after being cast out of the order, he went off to master the magic of the void. Now it's up to us to face him, and he is a tough adversary. Luckily, my favorite thing to do in game is unlocking new champions and seeing what awesome things they can do against these powerful bosses. There's a lot of things happening this month. You can face off against the brutal Hydra boss and compete in a ton of daily events and tournaments, including some special Valentine's Day events where you can get a brand new legendary champion. This is by far the best time to get started. Just click my link or scan the QR code, and new players will get a free starter pack worth almost $30, including a free champion Aina, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard you can use to summon an awesome champion as soon as you start playing. You can find your rewards in your inbox for the next 30 days only, and once you're playing, you can find me in game as Corinthius33, and you can even join my clan if you're fast enough. It's that simple. Just click the link in my description and I will see you in the game. After hearing about such an epic game, I started heading back home. Then I rushed back to the village, collecting some now much needed food, and back to my small home to go to bed. Laid in bed for what seemed like hours, trying to shake off the strange tingling sensation at the back of my neck. Where did this freak snowstorm come from? In my sleep, my mind's eye wandered to the howling wind outside, and the environment transformed and shaped by its sheer icy force. It felt as if I was floating above the village, looking toward Jagged Peak Mountain. I slowly moved towards it as if I was flying. Rumbling sound beated out in the distance. A drum of some kind? Looked at the forests and the clearings below and saw the strange creatures wandering around, attacking villagers. Then mountaineers joined the fight, not to assist the people, but to aid the monsters. I felt my body rushing through the air as the piercing sound of the wind grew louder. The drum grew stronger, and all of a sudden I was inside the mountain, standing in the dark with nothing but a large gray door sitting at the other side of the chamber I found myself in. Then it seemed like 3 knocks on the door. I jolted awake suddenly on day 2, looking around to make sure I was really in my home again. The dream, it seemed so real. Then I heard the village bell go off outside. The mayor called everyone again, thanking us all for our efforts in gathering the day before. Handed out tasks to everyone, giving me the task of rebuilding the storehouse and crafting more chests so that we could stock up more resources in preparation for this early winter. I went away deconstructing some of the storehouse and moving away the few barrels inside to the town square so I could start with a fresh slate. It took a good part of the day to get this build done, but then the mayor said he wanted to have iron doors. So the next day I took a trip into the mines, scoring some more coal and plenty of iron. Returning to the village, I crafted up the doors and popped the rest of the resources into the newly crafted chests. I'll probably have to put up signs at some point to make sure everyone knows where everything is kept, but before I could, commotion began outside. A scout had returned from a neighboring village, telling us of an attack that happened. The mayor decided to choose me to investigate, to see if there are any survivors. On day 4, I used some of the gathered iron to craft myself some better armor and weaponry, just in case whatever had attacked the village hung around. I grabbed a small amount of food, a few torches and a bed, and began my journey toward the neighboring village. On the way, I ran into several creepers that chased me until I lost them in the forest. Unfortunately, I then ran into several skeletons that wanted to use me as archery practice. Dodging between the trees, I got close to them and took them down, but not without nearly dying myself. Sore and bruised, I decided to use a small cave nearby as a temporary camp, sealing up the way and using torches to keep myself warm through the night. I kept dreaming of that doorway in the darkness, causing me to wake up several times throughout the night, so I decided to gather some some more cobblestone and iron since I couldn't sleep. Just when I was finally about to sleep, I heard the sound of an exploding creeper outside. At first I thought they followed me here and were planning on blowing up the makeshift wall I had built. When I removed a couple blocks, I saw it was day 5 and the creepers were attacking several strange looking smallish creatures. A couple of zombies joined in the fray and I thought I was going to have to deal with them all, but then the creepers decided to end the fight for everyone. After making sure the coast was clear, I began making my way toward the nearby village. Upon arriving, I saw that several of the buildings had been damaged and some of the villagers seemed frozen like statues, static and frozen in time. There were also strange snowy block columns risen from the ground, seemingly random around the village. I searched for any survivors by checking the buildings, only finding a little food and a book which seemed to belong to one of the village's scouts. The last entry described a particular shifting sound in the night and howling winds near Jagged Peak Mountain that disoriented villagers, making them get lost in the storm. The last page mentioned a butcher who could create a special soup that could bring enough warmth to help one against the icy weather, but there was no mention of who they were or where they might be. I decided to rest in one of the smaller buildings that seemed mostly functional against the frozen weather and set my sights to returning to the village the next day. On day 6, I spent most of the day making a beeline to my village. When I arrived, the mayor and several of the other villagers were already outside, busy repairing and storing food and materials. I told the mayor of what I had found, and he seemed concerned at the news, worried that it would happen to us next. I told him of the scout's journal, and he mentioned that another neighboring village had a butcher that may know the recipe that was spoken of. He said I should head there as soon as I can, but requested my help in gathering resources to build some walls first. The rest of that day, I dove back into the mines, exploring new chambers, to find more iron and coal that we sorely needed. This led to a couple of close calls with creepers, who had some fun blowing up the mines, along with a group of spiders who chased me off a cliff into a lower chamber. Luckily, there was water below. With survival becoming more difficult to accomplish, I made my way back up to the surface yet again, to store the resources in the storehouse and head back to my home to sleep. The next morning, some of the other villagers gave me some goods to trade with the butcher's village, and then I set off on my way to find answers and hopefully discover the soup that might give us an edge against the cold until we could figure out exactly how to stop this harsh winter. On my way, I ran into several more skeletons, which using the same dancing between the tree technique as before were fairly easy to deal with. But then I ran into 2 mountaineers that tried to shoot me with crossbows from atop of a nearby hill. They scared me at first, and I couldn't seem to get near them without receiving an arrow or two to the knee. I decided to flee rather than fight, running in a roundabout way to the village, which led me to a small clearing with a stone altar and a book. The book read, "Lost to Time. The servitors of wizards and sorcerers wait for a time when they will return to the land. They await the return of an artifact that can summon them from their slumber." There was also a warning. Beware of those that use crystals to force them into servitude once more. Not exactly sure of what it was referring to, or what it really meant, I decided to continue on through the night, toward the butcher's village. On the morning of day 8, I finally arrived at the village. I was greeted by several villagers to see someone else unaffected by the current situation. I offered the wares given to me by my home village, and we traded back and forth, striking up some good deals. Asked them about the butcher, and they told me to speak to their mayor. I entered the mayor's home, and he approached me straight away. He told me that the butcher had recently gone onto a trip into the nether, yet to return, and assumed missing. He confirmed that the butcher would be the only one with knowledge of that recipe. He asked me if I'd be willing to assist in finding out what had happened to him, and if possible, helping him get home. I agreed, and the mayor also said he would share resources with our village to help battle against the winter and the creatures. There was only one problem. The nether portal the butcher used had been damaged recently by the recent storm and would need to be repaired. Days 9 and 10 were spent collecting some more resources. Some food from some of those pigs earlier, sorry pigs, and also getting enough materials to fix the nether portal. To speed up this process, I mined well into the nights, leading to a few scary situations. I was overwhelmed in a ravine, running away from what seemed to be an army of mobs. I then almost fell through a hole in an abandoned mine shaft, nearly leading to my demise in a small pool of lava. Thankfully, I had my trusty bucket of water in hand. I returned to the nether portal at the crack of dawn of day 11 to repair and reignite the portal. I stepped into the purple gateway and gulped as my stomach and surroundings began to turn into jello. As soon as I arrived in the nether, I saw a group of odd-looking piglins running after what appeared to be a wandering trader. What would a wandering trader be doing in the nether? And why were those piglins blue? I traversed through the nether, eventually coming across another weird piglin that seemed a little more friendly. He offered me many wares in exchange for gold, but I only had one thing in mind. I asked him if he had seen a butcher. He smiled and responded by only telling me that every bit of information has its price, and the price for that specific information was 25 gold ingots. It seemed a little too easy though, as I had already seen gold on my way here, but it was too easy. The piglin merchant told me that all the gold in the nether already belongs to them, and that I would have to return with gold ingots from the overworld. He told me that they have tried many times to send piglins through the portal that pop up across the nether, but to no avail, and none of them have returned successfully. successfully. I agreed to get the gold and left the nether straight away. For the rest of day 11 through 13, I explored more caves looking for gold. I did get lucky coming across a few decent veins of gold ore, which helped to cut down on some of the work. However, I came across several creepers on several occasions that seemed to like blowing up and destroying my hard-mined gold, as well as hurting me in the process. Why do creepers love to turn up at just the most inopportune times? They really seem to have a score to settle with me or something. Midway through day 13, I returned to the village and began smelting the ores into ingots for the piglin. The next morning, I was preparing to head off back to the nether portal when the village was attacked by the strange-looking creatures and a couple of mountaineers armed with ice picks and crossbows. The other villagers did the best they could, but most of them ran into their homes, pretty much forcing me to be the sole defender of the village. It took a bit of tactical maneuvers, but I eventually killed off the creatures and the mountaineers. After the battle, the mayor came outside delighted and proud of the defense I'd managed to muster. He promoted me to the position of villager guard, alongside a couple of the other villagers that tried to assist. He also gave me a special sword, hoping that it would help me to continue to defend the innocent. That night, I gathered some food and decided to rest up before heading back into the nether. After recouping from the attack, I made my way to the portal again, and the temperature felt even lower now, so I was actually a bit excited to warm up in the nether. I returned to the piglin merchant, giving him this 25 gold, which he quickly took and smiled before telling me that the butcher had been captured and that he was the one to take him to a prison deep within the nether that no one had escaped from before, hanging over a gigantic lava lake. And the only way to reach it without crossing the rickety bridge guarded by some of the toughest piglins he knew would be via a strider to one of the small islands sitting beneath the prison. The piglin packed up his cart and took his leave, seemingly not wanting to stick around, especially with his new shiny overworld gold. So I needed a strider. That meant only one thing. Days 16 and 17, I searched for and raided a nether fortress for their chests, as I knew from the village elders that the nether dwellers kept saddles there sometimes in order for them to ride striders themselves. The first day was mostly fighting several mobs and accidentally angering a bunch of piglins. On day 17, I found a nether fortress. I had to fight my way inside and then tried to sneak around the best I could, looking through a couple chests with different luck, but finding diamonds. Jackpot. After a close call with one of the wither skeletons, I finally found a saddle and made my exit. Next, I decided to head back home to stock up on some more food supplies. The portal wasn't actually too far away. I must have just went in a big circle. I went to grab some food from the storehouse, but we seemed to be running a little low. I asked around and most of the villagers had been sent out to their farms to gather what they could. I joined in this task, but this permafrost had killed most of the crops that I had been tending to, leaving only patches of dirt where there was once fields of wheat for making bread. I went out from the village a bit further, gathering what food I could find, and on my way back, I noticed that there was less cows than before. Was the cold now killing them off too? I also popped into the mines again looking for gravel to get flint for making arrows. When I left the mines, I was met by a strange villager with white, almost blind looking eyes. He asked me whether or not I had seen any signs of golem activity. I don't know why, but I got the feeling I could not trust him. I was going to ask him who he was, but he quickly turned away and ran off into the forest. Can these days get any creepier? Actually, I shouldn't say that. A creeper might attack again. Day 19, I headed back into the nether with a good stock of food, a bow and arrow, and the resolve to find the butcher. My first plan of action was finding a strider. The only problem is they always stand too far from the shore. I placed down some cobblestone to build a bridge of sorts over to the strider. It took several attempts because he kept walking away whenever I got close to him, but eventually I did succeed in taming one. I gave it the name Red, which looking at it seemed appropriate. I rode Red to the small island underneath the prison right where the merchant said it would be. Then I had to leave him there, now needing to climb up some giant chains. Inside there were armored piglins, and after being caught by one, I did not want to have to be detected by another. After what felt like a stress-inducing eternity of sneaking around, I finally came across where they were keeping the butcher. He was kept within a cell with another inmate. I told him I was from the village and was sent by his mayor to rescue him, and then he introduced me to a friend, an illager chef that had also been kidnapped by the piglins during a warped war. Anyway, I quickly pulled out the bed I had and placed it down and got behind some blocks and tried to sleep. That's the power of a good night's rest. After alerting the entire prison that escape attempt was now occurring, we all climbed down the chain, returning to Red, who was waiting there patiently. The butcher took Red across first to safety, and then he hobbled back over for the illager chef I was still a little too unsure about saving. Next, it was my turn. However, as Red was coming back to me, several arrows flew from overhead and struck him down. I had to watch in slow motion as my trusty mount perished. With no other option and a revengeful rage, I climbed back up, making sure to hit the guard that shot Red off the bridge and into the lava. It was still overwhelming though, so I made a run for it, and eventually they stopped chasing me because they couldn't leave their post. I just hope the butcher was able to make it back to the overworld even though we were separated. On the morning of day 20, I returned to the village with many bruises and burns, only to see the chef and butcher waiting for me in the center of the town. They thanked me for saving them and told me of a rumored group of wandering traders in the area that might be willing to help, as they had been known to defy the arch Archivoker's commandments of no longer being able to perform heroic hijinks. As the chef started to head home, I thought to myself, maybe I could seek them out. Maybe they would know what is happening. The butcher also thanked me by sharing his recipe of this special spicy soup and also giving me a good helping to share with my home. His mayor also thanked me by sharing plenty of food and resources to take back to my village, as well as a recipe for a special set of armor that you would need emeralds to craft. The mayor offered to house me for the night, so I got some much needed sleep. On day 21, I returned to my home village, only to discover there had been an attack from some probably larger creatures while I was away. Several of the buildings had been damaged, as well as the village wall was broken in several places. Our survivors came out of hiding when they noticed it was me, and thunder struck off in the distance toward the mountain. The mayor came outside and instructed everyone that they must make repairs as soon as possible. I placed the food, resources, special soup, and some armaments that I found during my time in the nether into their respective storehouse chests. Then I made a plan for the next couple days. Days 22 and 23 were mostly spent gathering what resources were needed to repair the village, patch up the walls, and build up some more defenses, including a couple of watchtowers. I also made some bows and arrows for the survivors that had been newly promoted to villager guards to help them better defend themselves for the next attack. At the end of day 23, I decided to start the search for the wandering traders. I asked around and one of the villagers told me they had been seen last near the old quarry, but it would take about a day's travel by foot to get there. They seemed a little confused as to why I was seeking them out, but I just explained that any help would be good at this point. On the way to the quarry on the morning of day 24, I passed through an insane mountain range, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what appeared to be a giant copper goat head with a yellow witch accompanied by 2 dragons talking to a goat and an axolotl on top of it. That was definitely the weirdest thing I've ever encountered. I scurried on my way toward the old quarry because I was not prepared to take on 2 dragons. I've only heard rumors of 1 dragon existing where the Endermen are from. My train of thought was derailed when I ran into a group of several of those goblin creatures, and as I fought them off, a group of illagers were in the distance, enjoying the fight, but not joining in. Perhaps they were friends of the illager chef? Eventually, I arrived at the tavern by night, and was greeted by a couple of wandering traders. They welcomed me with open arms and offered me warm beverages, food, and a bed to sleep in. I asked them about those that were still heroes, and it was pretty clear they didn't want to answer my questions directly, and they just said none of those were left after they'd been hunted and exiled by the Archivoker. They were merely traders now, and could offer a place of respite for those in need. Nothing more and nothing less. I did take up their offer for a room and slept in what was the most comfortable bed I've ever experienced in my life. However, that comfort was cut short when I had more nightmares of the storm. The thunder-like drums resonating from behind the dark gray doorway, and a flash of the villager with the white eyes. I quickly awoke on day 25 with the image of that peculiar blind man still in my mind, but was quickly distracted by the fact that there was another wandering trader in my room. He looked a little different, regal somehow. He sat in the chair next to my desk and looked at me expectantly.
Why have you been asking about the wandering heroes?
Pardon?
You were asking my compatriots downstairs if there were any other heroes left.
Yes, the village where I come from and the neighboring ones, we need help against whatever is happening.
Well, there may be a handful of heroes left that may have the capacity to offer assistance, but we don't just help anyone.
But we are just villagers. We can't fight these creatures as well as the mountaineers that have turned against us too.
I'm well aware of what's going on in these lands.
So you can help us?
You must prove yourself trustworthy and honorable, and that you're not in league with the Archivoker.
What can I do?
There is an illager of the most ill kind in a nearby abandoned wizard's tower. If you can deal with them, then you will prove yourself worthy of the hero's help. Understood?
Well, yes, I guess, if it can help us survive this terrible winter and stop these creatures. I looked away for only a moment, and when I glanced back to where he sat, he was gone. Spooky. Was I still dreaming? I went back into the main area of the tavern and thanked the 2 traders that were still there. On my way out, I noticed a sign on the wall, again mentioning the lost art of Gallimancy. I asked them what it was about, but they told me that if I wanted to know more, there were some ruins in the abandoned mine next to the old quarry. I made a mental note of that and set off to gather some more resources before heading off on my quest. On day 26, I scouted out the area, wandering around for quite a while, eventually finding the half-broken tower. I hid behind some nearby bushes and watched from a distance. Several mountaineers came and went, leaving the tower what I thought to be vacant. I entered quietly, carefully making my way up to the top when I saw a strange shaman-looking illager in jade green clothing. He appeared to be standing there in some sort of trance. That was until a low rumble built in the distance and thunder rolled over the land. Suddenly, he awoke and turned to face me. He took no time in beginning to attack me, casting strange wind magic, which threw me into the air. I got a few good hits in when he managed to catch me again with his magic, throwing me from atop the tower. Nearly dead on the ground, I looked up to see the illager jump from the tower and gracefully land on the ground. But thankfully, out of nowhere, an arrow flew by, distracting him, long enough for me to secure the final blow. Then thunder roared in the distance. I looked to where the arrow had come from and saw the illager chef running toward me. He gave me some food and potions and told me that was was one of the wind callers, shaman sorcerers that were harboring in the winter storm, and seemed to call those creatures to his aid. When I went to thank the chef, he said we were now even and we parted ways, so I decided to head back toward the tavern. I managed to get back to the tavern by the morning of day 27, only to find the leader gone and a note left for me simply reading, "You have done well, we will speak soon." Slightly disappointed, I headed off back toward my village. Days 28 and 29 were spent collecting resources to repair and improve the villages. I also spent some time searching for more emeralds to upgrade my armor, but unfortunately didn't find many. On my way back from mining, saw another figure off in the distance, staring in my direction from the distant tree line. The figure quickly turned and ran off. Was it the white-eyed villager again? I quickly headed back to my village before nightfall. I did not want to be out here with him. I assisted the other villagers and the mayor in continuing the repairs of both my village and that of the butchers over the next few days. We created some more watchtowers, helped the blacksmith make more weapons for the people, secured more food, mostly carrots, and passed out the special soup to the people that needed it. The next day, I spent trading to get food from the butcher's village, and I asked them where I could mine for more resources to craft better gear. The blacksmith told me that the abandoned mine near the quarry might be a likely place as it used to be the primary source of emeralds in the past. On day 34, I traveled back to the quarry and entered the mine. I successfully found several emerald ore after searching for ages, as well as a couple of diamonds and even more gold. Toward the end of my mining trip, I came across a little library with a book that mentioned the banned art of gollemancy. It stated, while resonance crystals were once used to power dormant golems once created, they had a corrupting influence on the personality of the golem, eventually turning it against its creator. I continued to mine a little more, encountering some hairy situations with some of the mine-dwelling spiders and creepers yet again, but managed to defeat them with ease as I felt better prepared this time. I then found the entrance to a stone chamber. I made a quick decision weighing up the pros and cons of whether or not to explore it, and deciding just to explore it the next day after getting some sleep. One makeshift stone room later, a couple of torches and a bed, and I slept peacefully through the night. Inside the stone chamber were various golems long since dormant, dead to time. Surrounding them and peppered around the floor were blocks of materials used to create the golems. I walked around the large chamber seeing if I could either find something useful to take back to the village or to discover more of what happened here. I was interrupted when a voice rung out in the dim light of my torch. I turned to see an iron golem that was still very much alive.
Why do you disturb our resting place, human?
I'm terribly sorry, I didn't intend to cause any offense.
You are not one of them, the ill folk.
The illagers?
You are different. Why are you here?
I found this place purely by accident, but I suppose I could ask you if you know anything about the creatures on the surface. They look like golems, but also kind of don't. It's hard to describe.
It's happening again.
What's happening?
I will give you the answers you seek, but I'll need your help in return.
Of course.
The creatures you have seen above, they have been twisted by improper use of what are called the resonance crystals. They corrupt the very core of a golem and it turns it into something else, something terrible. If you manage to find one of these resonance crystals, bring it to me and I'll give you all my answers and my help.
Thank you. Now, what do resonance crystals look like?
You'll know when you see them. You may call me the Unbound in future visits. Now, I return to my slumber.
After my conversation with the golem, I continued to gather more resources for a couple days, and then made my way back to the village, stopping short when I saw an excursion between a group of illagers and a group of the golem-looking creatures. I saw another figure behind them, similar to the other windcaller, appearing to command the golems from afar. That's when mountaineers joined the fray and helped the golems defeat the illagers with ease. Keeping my distance, I followed the windcaller back to what looked like a partially open temple-like structure in the forest. I made a note of where it was to come back later, and then made my way back to the village. I arrived home on day 40 and unloaded all my extra resources. Then I got the blacksmith to assist me in crafting up my new armor in his forge area. I was feeling strong and looking good. And now I just needed some rest to prepare to scout out that temple of the other windcaller I found. With my shiny new emerald-lated armor, I returned to the temple, watching it from afar. The windcaller just stood in the open by the entrance, casting his spells, causing the howling wind to grow stronger. Several booming beats of thunder roared out again from Jagged Peak Mountain. This windcaller looked stronger than the last, and he had some big golems with him now, so I decided to return to the village and seek assistance. On day 42, I returned to my home village to notify the mayor of the windcallers and say that I believe them to be the cause of the storm and the summoners of those creatures. The mayor sent me to the butcher's village for help, and they agreed to send some villagers with me to assist in defeating the windcaller. The next day, alongside my allies, I returned to the temple and wasted no time in entering. It led into a big cave with the windcaller all by himself, or so we thought. As I moved in closer, ready to take him on, both golems and goblins came out from the darkness. The other villagers and I fought valiantly, trying to carve our way through to the windcaller. It was a tough and crazy battle. When all the stone creatures were finally defeated, a powerful wind picked up some of my troops, so I quickly took up my bow and shot the windcaller, striking him down. I guess he's the most vulnerable when casting a spell. We took a moment to mourn the loss of the villagers who fell during battle before making our way out of the cave and back toward the village. On the night of day 44, we made it back to the village and I told the mayor of the victory, and the weather still seemed to be worsening, to the point of having to build more fires around the village to keep everyone warm, carrying torches with us when it snowed. Even the soup began not to warm our bones as it once did. Maybe there are more wind callers out there. I rested in my home on day 45, reflecting on what happened so far, and on what I had accomplished. That's when someone knocked on my door, but when I answered it, there was just a note left outside reading, "Come to the old quarry in 10 days time." It was a bit ominous and made me want to check on how all my neighbors were doing, helping them with whatever they needed. Days 46 to 48, I spent most of my time braving the cold outside with the butcher's soup and torch in hand, fending off the golems and mountaineers that were getting nearer and nearer to the village. I ended up finding some stray villagers that had run away from their homes and gotten captured by some mountaineers. I made sure to bring them back to my village after learning theirs had been destroyed. The next 2 days were spent expanding the village with more homes and huts for the stray villagers to live in, also forcing me to further expand the walls to include a new section had enough room to house everyone, as well as expanding the graveyard for those that perished. Thankfully, the butcher's village sent some assistance and shared their resources to help. On day 51, I saw the white-eyed villager beyond the village walls again, chopping down trees and throwing sticks and wood in seemingly random fashion, as if he was spelling something out on the ground. Once he noticed that he was being watched, he stopped again for a moment, frozen, and then ran back into the forest. I tried my best to follow him, but I lost him and had to turn back around to my village. I had a really strange feeling about him. More survivors arrived on days 52 and 53, again forcing us to gather more and more resources, as we are now using more coal, more lumber and stone for construction, and more iron for making iron tools and equipment. It really began to push the limits of what our little village could do. I wondered if we were going to be able to sustain this, even with the aid from the butcher's village, never mind surviving whatever it was that was happening. Day 54, I received another note on the door of my home, this time reading, "When you arrive, take a leap of faith." I didn't know what it meant, but I'm guessing I would find out the next day, which was when I was supposed to go to the old quarry. I asked around to see if anyone had seen who had knocked on my door and left a note, but no one had seen anything. Very peculiar. How could someone just walk into the village without being seen? Most of this day was then spent fending off attacks by the mountaineers that had finally found our village, followed by repairing the damages from those attacks at night. Then on day 55, I returned to the old quarry as requested, looking around for the person who had left those notes, presumably the wandering heroes since they could turn invisible, but no one was here. I walked over to the mouth of the quarry, and there was now what seemed to be a hole in the ground just covered up by a small cave entrance. The hole seemed to be really deep, almost leading to nothing. I questioned what I was doing there, and then I remembered that I had to take a leap of faith. I guessed why not. I jumped in, falling for what seemed like too long, deeper than what I had ever thought possible. Suddenly, I broke out of a small tunnel into a large chamber, landing into a pool of water. I made my way over to the edge of the pool with the wandering leader standing there with 3 other wandering traders with him.
You passed the test!
Well, you could have told me about their powerful wind magic, or their ability to control those creatures.
I had faith in you.
That faith nearly got me killed.
And here you stand, in front of what is left of the Wandering Hero Guild.
Just you 4?
What is it that you seek?
My village, our villages, need help. The golem creatures and the mountaineers are growing more aggressive, starting to attack us directly now. We can't defend forever.
I believe you have killed a second Windcaller too.
I mean, yes?
Then you are already doing what needs to be done.
What do you know? Is there more?
One more that we know of, as well as their leader, the Isologer.
The Isologer?
He was once one of the Illagers, under command of the Archivoker, the leader of the Illager folk. He is a sorcerer that disagreed with the direction the Archivoker took, splintering off to create his own faction.
What does this have to do with the storm? With the creatures?
He found something deep within Jagged Peak Mountain, and is using it to gain mastery over wind, ice, and storm. He is building the permafrost for some nefarious purpose, and must be stopped.
What can we do?
We are but few in number, due to the battles we had with the Archivoker. But numbers aren't everything. Here, a gift to show that you are now considered a friend. We are monitoring the situation as it unfolds, but we will be there when the time is right. The guild is always watching.
Thank you.
There is a secret staircase leading back up to the surface. Stay well and continue to bring the fight to our enemies.
I returned to the surface with a renewed spirit and determination to see this winter through. Days 56 through 59, I continued to defend the village from constant waves of enemies, attacking both my home village and that of the butchers. We attacked them from the watchtowers we had built, and the new bow I had been given by the guild proved to be pretty effective in slaying the golem creatures. We did take a lot of casualties, and I worried in my mind that we would not be able to survive these attacks forever. After the attacks seemed to stop for now, the mayors of both towns bestowed me with the title of Village Hero, giving me access to the rarest recipe known to villager kind. The plans for crafting the weapon and armor used by the fabled villager, the Emerald Hero, who once defended the nearby villagers from countless attacks, helping them to thrive in dark times. Humbled, I made a note of the vast amount of resources I would need to create them, and took the night of day 59 to rest for the days to come. On day 60, the thunder began to grow more regularly, and even the ground seemed to shake at points. Villagers conducted meetings to state their concerns over not having enough food to survive the winter, again prompting a mad search for producing better food that would sate their hunger for longer. The butcher told us that if we could find enough gold, he knew of a way to turn the colossal quantity of carrots into gold carrots, which would provide more sustenance, and the mayors gave me the task to search for the gold. I spent the next few days searching through several caves and found some new mine shafts, leading to discovery of more gold and even some emeralds and diamonds here and there. I did get swarmed by a big group of mobs at one point in a big underground chasm, but found myself easily the victor due to my increasing experience in battling. On day 64 and 65, I explored an abandoned room, finding chests full of emeralds, some enchanted items I could take back to share with the village, TNT, golden apples, and various other resources we could use to help prepare the village for future fights. And as I delved deeper, the mobs seemed to grow stronger, leading to some pretty intense near-death moments. One time dropping into lava and having to quickly jump into a pool of water as I forgot my water bucket. On day 66, I made my way back up to the surface, finding myself quite far away from the village and my initial entrance to the mine. I took a moment to scan my surroundings, and that's when I saw a polar bear sitting further down the hill where I had found my exit. He was just sitting there with a fishing rod in his mouth, catching fish from a half-frozen lake. That's peculiar.
Not as peculiar as everything else going on. This winter's unnatural.
Whoa, you can talk?
What, you've never met a polar bear before?
Not one that talked.
Well, I guess I am one of a kind.
What are you doing here?
Well, apart from catching my dinner, I'm contemplating the change in the land.
The storm? The strange creatures?
Well, there's that, but I mean something much deeper, affecting the whole world. You can almost taste it in the air. Something's off. Something's wrong.
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
Never mind. Just keep yourself safe during these times.
I will, you too. I left the polar bear behind, thinking about what he meant by something else changing. All my time for days 67 and 68 was taken up with taking the stacks of carrots we had and turning them into golden carrots, expanding the storage in the storehouse, and traveling to the butcher's village to share the food supply, which they were more than happy to receive. Even though now we had golden carrots, it wasn't enough to sustain both villages for too long, so for days 69 to 71, we continued to travel further and further out away from the villages to search for food, leading to several skirmishes with mountaineers, which were now more easily defeated as more of the villagers had been continuing to learn how to fight and take care of themselves. I also came in contact with the Elder Chef again, who shared the location of igloos a local tribe used to frequent before moving off to other lands. On arriving at that location, we found some chests containing apples and other food that were very well preserved by the ice. Another stroke of luck, especially because they're still fresh, just a little frozen. Day 72 and 73, I helped train some of the more battle-hardened villagers, and they were promoted to villager guards, which would help in the continuing defense of our villages. This concept seemed to become more widely accepted by other villages since the Archivoker has not allowed the spawning of iron golems anymore. The village hadn't been attacked in a few days, so I decided to further reinforce the village walls on day 74 and 75 with iron and other materials to again help fend off against future attacks, which were now seeming inevitable. On day 76, another scout, barely alive, returned to the village, bringing with him reports of strange crystals growing out of the ground in one of the lost villages closer to Jagged Peak Mountain. The mayor again looked to me to be the one to investigate. Worried that it may be another ill omen, or perhaps even the crystals the Unbound Golem mentioned, I decided that I should go visit the village the scout spoke of. Toward the end of day 77, I arrived at the village to see clusters of the crystal-like blocks sticking out of the ice and snow that seemed to grow out of the village well. The villagers here were also frozen over. I was now even more determined to help bring an end to this winter. I also made sure to grab some of the crystals for the golem before leaving. Day 78, I returned to the chamber where the golem slumbered, and he awoke as I approached.
You have returned?
I have. I think this may be the crystal you spoke of.
Finally, I might be able to help my people. You have done our kind a great service, human.
Thanks. What are these crystals used for, apart from the twisted magic you mentioned before?
Specific kinds of elemental magic can resonate with the energy that lies within these crystals, giving access to a primal power to those that wield them correctly. However, these crystals are being used for an evil purpose, which is warping the latent magic. Far more evil, far darker than I have seen in the centuries that I have existed.
Could they be used against the Iceologer?
I do not recommend anyone use these corrupted crystals. The only thing you can do is to destroy them before they can be used to summon my twisted brethren.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
I wish to impart a gift onto you for your help. I give to you this powerful artifact which enables the carrier to call forth on one of my brothers, giving them life once more. It would be my honor to have us fight by by your side.
I will put it to good use.
I know you will.
Leaving the mines, I was immediately attacked again by 3 of the evil golems, but this time they seemed a little different, empowered somehow, and slightly bigger. They hit hard, so after taking a beating, I tried to run around and shoot at them from a distance in order to survive. The bow the wandering leader gave me proved to be super useful against them. I spent day 79 resting up and thinking about my fight with those stronger golems, while I handed out more food to the villagers and delivered more to the butcher's village as well. Whatever was causing them to grow in power really needed to be stopped, as I don't think many villagers would be able to survive if attacked by them. I would need to take the fight to them. I would need to finally step up to the mantle of the Emerald Hero and get aid from the blacksmith to create the weapons and armor I would need to save my village. Days 80 through 82 were spent mining and defeating underground mobs, as well as gathering special materials and defeating more of those golems and goblin-like creatures, which were now growing bolder and bolder. Then the mission for collecting the materials needed finally ended in a trip to the Nether for the blacksmith to create the emerite equipment. Day 83 was mostly spent with the blacksmith in his forge, doing the necessary rites and processes to craft the armor and weapons. Once everything was finally crafted, it was the nerve-wracking time to pick up the mantle of the Emerald Hero. The mayor then held a celebration to bolster the spirits of the village, and it was really nice to see the villagers smile again. As soon as dawn revealed the sun over the horizon on day 84, the town was attacked by a large force of golems, mountaineers, and a smaller looking windcaller. It was an epic siege that lasted 2 whole days, and had many waves of attacks. Arrows flew back and forth from the watchtowers, and there was a fierce battle below. When we finally had to retreat into our walls, a huge golem approached the gate. I looked around and noticed the morale of the villagers begin to drop, so I mustered up enough courage to jump from the village wall into the fray and summon an iron golem to assist me in battle. As the Emerald Hero, I fought tirelessly, eventually carving through the enemy ranks and forcing the windcaller to retreat. We won, but not without casualties and injuries. On day 86, I helped tend to the wounded, giving them food and what little potions of healing we had left, having the cleric make whatever last ones he could. I also added just a little bit more reinforcement to the walls because they were already pretty strong. After helping the villagers, I decided to head out with my iron golem and take the fight to our enemies, and back toward the mountain where they came from. I took the next few days to scout around both of our villages, seeking out the twisted resonance crystals the enemy was planting atop ice columns. When I destroyed them, the golems and goblins seemed to lose focus, as if they're being controlled or called by the totem structures. I did this several times, which caused them to begin to wander around a bit confused, and in a confused rage, the weak-minded goblins began attacking the mountaineers. The Unbound Golem was right, destroying those crystals really helped. On day 90, I returned to the chamber of the Unbound Golem to present my theory on what the resonance crystals were doing, but to my utter surprise, the chamber was now completely empty. No materials for creating golem bodies littering the floor, no dormant golems, no living golems, just vanished. How was this even possible? I returned home, perplexed as to what happened. Is he okay? Did he manage to help his people with the crystal I'd given him? I was left with more questions than answers. Over the next 2 days, alongside several villager guards, I persisted in pushing back the golems and mountaineers further and further toward Jagged Peak Mountain. However, the closer I got, the heavier my heart felt, and I began to experience flashes of the same nightmare from before. A dark gray doorway, darkness, a villager with white eyes, and a low-pitched drumming thunder. For days 93 and 94, we managed to push the creatures back to the base of the mountain, so I began creating a little outpost with a watchtower, reinforced walls, and a place for the villager guards to rest and take turns keeping watch. I then returned to the village to let the mayors know of our success. The mayor was so proud of the achievements and defense of our village. The next plan of action was to try to push them back into the mountain itself, but we needed more resources to reinforce the outpost. I got some more resources from the storehouse, while the blacksmith prepared some more able-bodied men to join the ranks of the guards. Then I led them to the outpost, and I took some time to teach them some basics. I spent days 95 and 96 gathering the final resources we would need to make our final stand within the bowels of the mountain. I took another trip into the Nether to gather some more gold, to try to make golden carrots and golden apples to share with the guards, while trying my best not to get caught stealing the gold from the piglins. There was one time that they spotted me, but with my new armor, they had no chance against me. On day 97, the Iron Golem, several villager guards, and I pushed into the mountain. We fought several groups of golems and goblins, with no mountaineers in sight, pushing deeper into the heart of the mountain. We eventually reached a square chamber with the small wind caller in the middle, and many dormant golems surrounding him. We were the first ones to act, and I let loose an arrow straight into him, catching him off guard. The villager guards then went to attack the golems that began to awaken. I ran in to help assist the guard in cutting them down. Next, the wind caller called swarms of the smaller goblin creatures to his aid. I cut down wave after wave, getting closer and closer to the wind caller, right up to the point where he cast a tornado under my feet, throwing me up into the air. I quickly knocked back and released an arrow directly into him, ending hopefully the last wind caller once and for all. For being the leaders of such big armies, they weren't really the toughest. Suddenly, redstone lamps at the other end of the chamber seemed to light themselves, revealing the dark gray doorway recessed into the wall. The same gate from my dreams. A series of clockwork sounds and ticking resounded within the chamber as the door creaked slightly open. Before going in, we decided to regroup at the outpost outside and rest for the night. On the morning of day 98, the wandering leader and his 3 heroes arrived, joining us for our final push into the mountain.
The time is now. We are at your service, Emerald Hero.
I'm just a normal villager.
Your actions say otherwise.
Thank you for helping.
We will end whatever this accursed isolager is doing within the heart of the mountain.
With the villager guards inspired by their newly arrived allies, the wandering leader passed out some health potions and some food. On day 99, the doorway led through some twisted hallways that eventually led to a long bridge leading to a huge platform. My heart was thumping in my chest as we got closer to the platform, and you could see a giant sleeping golem. Standing in front of the giant golem stood the isolager, who seemed to recognize the wandering leader straight away. Then the wandering leader took out a spear and went invisible, and the isolager turned and quickly woke up the golem before running away. The wandering heroes followed me into battle as I ran at this tempest golem. I got a few good hits in, but I was also taking a lot of damage. The massive golem seemed unfazed. Then it was his turn as he began to summon those golems from before and many types of mountaineers. The wandering heroes now joined the fray, taking out as many of the golem's minions as they could, giving me a better chance at taking on the tempest golem. I still had to fight through his minions to get to him, and sometimes I used my enchanted bow too, which seemed to do some damage. But the giant golem was so focused on building up his army, seeming to not want to waste his energy on us. The battle continued for a long time, and let's just say I'm really glad I had some items to heal up. His army grew exponentially as the fight droned on, giving the wandering heroes a chance to show their might. I kept attacking tirelessly until the huge golem toppled over, dropping a bunch of nice loot. But his remaining minions still needed to be dealt with. Now I could see how the isolager was able to send so many waves of troops to attack the surrounding villages. After we finally defeated the last of his corrupted army, I looked around for the wandering leader. I found him battling against the isolager. With no more allies on his side, the isolager looked to see us approaching to assist our leader. This distraction gave the wandering leader a chance to knock out the isolager. The cold seemed to leave the chamber instantly. The wandering leader asked the isolager where he had gotten this new magic from. He replied that he had gotten it from a witch from beyond the veil, a white witch that had shared her secrets from the void and showed him how to corrupt resonance crystals and grow in power beyond his wildest dreams. He warned us that it wasn't over before the wandering leader gestured for me to finish him.
Consider this your initiation into the guild, if you choose to.
I looked across the faces of the wandering heroes, remembering my fellow villagers, and I knew my answer. Sorry, but I can't. Not right now. My place is amongst my fellow villagers.
Fair enough. You know where to find us if you change your mind.
The isolager then quickly pulled out an ice wand to attack with, and the wandering leader struck him down with a spear. We slowly made our way out of the mountain to see the storm had finally stopped. The wind had gone, and a warmth clung to the air again. On day 100, I returned to my home village with the villager guards to a hero's welcome. Villagers were already replanting crops in the fresh earth, some even fishing in ponds, rivers, and nearby lakes that were beginning to unfreeze. The mayor looked relieved, and the butcher was there cooking food for people now that we no longer had to worry about rationing through a long winter. Spring had begun to settle into the land again, and it felt so refreshing. All I wanted to do was take off my armor and to go enjoy the peace with the other villagers. And that's how I survived 100 days as a villager in hardcore Minecraft. Thanks so much to Coffee Fuel Genius, Skies, and Zetro for helping me make this video, to Luke the Notable for starting the 100 Days trend, to my patrons for supporting my channel, and to you for watching. Also, please consider liking and subscribing to help support the channel. Thanks again for watching!